Nursing students, time to talk. Welcome to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast. I'm your good and faithful host, Michael Smith. Thanks for continuing to subscribe to the show. Write into the show at realtalknursing@gmail.com or use Facebook Messenger or contact us through Instagram and Twitter to share your experiences, ask questions, and give feedback. Thank you to everyone who started following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. More listeners means more and better content. Make sure to share the episode with classmates and especially those coming up behind us as underclassmen and the younger cohorts. This show is about mentorship and stewardship, so let's give a hand up to those who are coming behind us. Let's build a community of fun, engaged, and supportive nurses and nursing students. So with that, let's get the show rolling.
If you like the show, the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is available on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Libsyn Web Player, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. So, go wherever you download podcasts, subscribe, rate us, review us, write into the show, and smash that subscribe button. Remember, only leave 5-star reviews. That's the only rating that counts to get us noticed by more nursing students. Write into the show at realtalknursing@gmail.com or on Facebook Messenger. You can also join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're building a community of fun, supportive nursing students, and I want you to be part of this crazy nursing school journey.
All right, well, welcome to it. So, one of the first questions we're going to tackle for the Pre-Req student segment is what classes to take together. And one of the things I want to talk about is someone will invariably ask if they should take, some combination of classes, so like chemistry and A&P2 at the same time. And the split decision is this. You have to find the balance between building stamina and time management and earning good grades. And here's kind of what I mean. There will come a time when you don't get to choose what classes you take or what combination of classes you take. You're going to have to take nursing fundamentals and advanced physical assessments and pathophysiology all at the same time. So if you take it easy all the way through nursing school, you'll never learn the time management and fortitude needed in order to pass these difficult classes all at the same time. And speaking specifically to, the extremes, I guess, you have a single mom with kid, a single mom with kids, obviously, but a single mom going through class, taking classes one at a time. And that's all that they can do. Kind of the same thing, though, because eventually that single mom, who has her kids full-time is going, or single dad, single parent with their kids full-time is going to have to take all of nursing school at the same time, no matter what the schedule is. And so there is some utility in doing all that. So once you get into nursing school, all these things kind of need to be in place. You have to have your time management down. You have to, you kind of have to have that intestinal fortitude to get through the suck, so to speak. So all these things have to be in place. And it doesn't matter if you have kids. It doesn't matter if you have a long drive. It doesn't matter if you are your parents' full-time caretaker. The deadline is the deadline. So if you have assignments that are due, it doesn't matter what other things are happening in your life. Nursing school is nursing school, and therefore you kind of have to get those things in place. So there's but again, there's a balance because you do have to apply for school, and you definitely want your application to look really good. And so while I completely understand the perspective that you need good grades to get into nursing school, there are other considerations. There's more to nursing school than just grades. You have to build up your muscles, so to speak. So you have to be able to manage the workload of several difficult and demanding classes, labs, clinicals. Oh my God, the clinicals. You need to be able to manage your home life to such an extent that it doesn't interfere with school life. And this is by far the most difficult task for prereq students, in my estimation. You might get some forgiveness and, extensions or whatever from your prereq instructors, but if there are any nursing instructors who allow for delays, and other things to interfere with nursing school, I haven't seen it or heard of it. So there's that. Nursing school is a completely different animal than anything else that I'd heard of or experienced personally. So don't dismiss the idea that you have to get used to the workload at some point. Going easy on yourself through prereqs, might give you good grades, but that's not the only thing that's taken into account in a nursing school application. My final advice on the subject is as follows. Live your life in such a way that your grades are the least important aspect of your application.
Are you tired of the same old badge reel? Do you have to wear the same scrub color as everyone else? Are your undershirts boring and kinda stinky after wearing your lucky shirt through 5-in-a-row 12s? You can wear personality in other ways. Go to badgeladybynerdwear.com and check out her crazy selection. She also takes custom orders on a limited basis. Tell her you're a Real Talk School of Nursing podcast listener. Be nice to her and she'll be nice to us. It might take 2 or 3 weeks for custom orders, and you can probably count on a few days, depending on her actual job schedule, to get your badges shipped. I know you'll treat her like your best friend at clinicals, so go to badgeladybynerdwear.com and order the coolest badge reels out there. Badgeladybynerdwear.com and tell her you're a Real Talk School of Nursing podcast listener.
You're listening to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast with Michael Smith.
All right, well, welcome back. So I'm going to read through for the nursing student portion about someone who kind of towards the end of their program and they're looking forward. And there's a lot of what this person writes that I'm really on board with, like very, very much on board with. And I don't want to... There's a certain point where like, yep, and then they just cross a line and you'll see what I mean. So the person writes, I'm within an ADN program investigating FNP role and possibility of becoming an FNP without RN experience, because not all programs require nursing experience and most don't even require a nursing degree, but accept selected bachelor degrees. I'm not sure of the validity of that entire statement, but let's just take it at face value. Let's just take it at face value that those things are truths. Okay, so let's move on to the next part here. They talk about through my clinical rotation, my experience on the med-surg unit opened my eyes to inpatient nursing care. I'm with you so far. This insight has significantly affected my personal position in regards to becoming a med-surg nurse in a hospital or inpatient setting. Again, I'm still with this guy. Before I go on any further, I must mention how greatly I admire RNs and blah, 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 blah. Okay, keep moving. They work really hard, privilege and all that fun stuff. That being said, which sometimes when you hear like that being said or something like that, it kind of negates everything you say right behind it. I don't think that's the case here, but I thought it was kind of funny anyway. So that being said, I know myself well enough to know that med-surg simply is not for me. Again, I'm with this person up to this point. Not that I'm not able to do the job, but more than I'm not willing to put myself in a position against my work ethics where I don't enjoy my job or don't find it meaningful. And that's where we split. That's where I really started going, okay, now we're no longer parallel here. They continue. I have many reasons, but mainly burnout or moral injury, not enough autonomy, constant carrying out orders, no or lack of breaks, and the brutal hours with a family, not having the resources to use my skills within my scope of practice to the highest of my ability, etc., and the list goes on. They continue that they are eager to learn and practice at the top of their license, and they're unwilling to sacrifice money for a job they don't enjoy. They need as much autonomy as possible. They have a deep desire or passion for primary care. They are seeking employment type that includes prevention and preventative care and education, and any recommendations that they were asking for any recommendations, and they were seriously considering becoming an FMP for many reasons, which include, number one, why not shoot for the moon? Number two, there's great autonomy. Number three, they are involved in preventative care. Number four, patient education. Number five, primary care. And number six, they work under their own practice. And okay, there's so much to discuss. There's so much that just, oh gosh, there's a lot to dig up and dig at there. So there's a lot to be learned in the med-surg area. You have to start somewhere, and if you can get into like the emergency department, great. If you can't get into some kind of specialty or grad school right away, what are you going to do? So again, there was a bunch of that I totally agreed with. I felt very similarly that med-surg was going to be would be very tough. Not that I couldn't do it, and I had a department that looked at me very seriously, and I looked at them very seriously as a secondary. It's where I did my preceptorship, and it was a great floor, and there were great people there, and I kind of relate it back to my time in the military. You can be in the armpit of the United States as far as military bases go, which is Fort Polk, Louisiana. It sucks. It's the weather is pretty terrible there all the time. I mean, you have Louisiana that's very hot and humid, and there's a lot of areas that are, pretty tough to be in, and Fort Polk kind of pulls out all the stops on that. But if you're there with some really great people, I mean, and again, I'm not disparaging anybody in Louisiana, so don't misunderstand me there, but you can be stationed in the worst possible place within anywhere, but if you're surrounded by great people, it's completely, it's not just tolerable, it can be really great. And you can also be stationed with the greatest, in the greatest location ever. I mean, you could be, what if you were practicing nursing and you're in, I don't know, in Northern California? You got mountains all around you, it's beautiful, the weather's pretty much perfect year round. You can go surfing, you can go skiing, you can do all this kind of stuff. It's literally one of the most perfect places in the United States. But you work with a bunch of jerks. It's, this perfect place, or this seemingly perfect place, is no longer perfect, and it's kind of shitty, to be honest with you. I mean, there's not a lot of good that can be said about it all. So, I don't really, it's a lot to unfold there. So I'm having several issues with the statement, but in particular, the I'm unwilling to sacrifice X for a job that I don't enjoy. And the first thing that came to my mind was, my God, what a millennial thing to say. And just as a side note, I'm considered a millennial. So, most of the time when middle-aged people say millennials, they really mean the age group that's under the millennials. So I'm considered a graybeard millennial. So when somebody says millennial, what they really mean is, somebody who was born in like 1995 and later. So they're the 20-something crowd, right? And I couldn't help it. I'm just being honest. That was the first thing that came to my mind. But I digress. So they went through, presumably, this person went through presumably the last 2 years of school, or so with Pre-Reqs, or I'm sorry, they went through presumably at least 2 years of school, or so with Pre-Reqs and nursing school. And you got to ask yourself, was it always enjoyable? Or was there some element of sacrifice knowing that, you're kind of paying dues? You have to kind of pay your dues in order to get to something better. I mean, can you think of anything in your life that was just, you got with no sacrifice on your part, and was it really that enjoyable? I mean, if you didn't have to earn it, and if you just got it, if you just got something handed to you, is that something that's valuable? I mean, for people who have to like buy their own first car, I mean, like for me, it was like, it's like nobody can eat in my car because I don't want, it was a truck, but no, you can't eat in my truck. And there was a seat cover was one of the first things I bought for it. And I washed that thing every weekend, and you took really good care of it because I paid for it with my own money, and I realized how hard it was to earn all of that. And kind of the same concept, if people just give stuff to you, it's probably not valuable if people just give stuff to you, right? And so, probably some of the most worthwhile things you are going to do in your life are going to be very difficult, and there's going to be a huge element of sacrifice before that. So, through the 2 years of Pre-Reqs and the year and a half or 2 years of nursing school, is it always enjoyable? And so, the statement kind of indicated on some level that they were unwilling, to do X because they didn't enjoy it, and that just didn't, that really struck me as very odd and a very kind of spoiled bratish way, I guess. The next thing that kind of came to mind was, do they think that there's some job out there, especially an entry-level job, where you get paid a very respectable salary, you have full autonomy, every day you go to work, you feel completely satisfied and fulfilled, and you get 15-minute breaks every, in a 4-hour period, and a 30-minute lunch break, or an hour-long lunch break, no matter what's going on, that job doesn't exist. And so I think there's this element of, there's an element of kind of utopianism going on. And that may not be exactly what they meant, when they wrote that exactly, but it sure sounded like that's what they meant exactly. And it sounded like they wanted to jump into a position that takes, most people 20 years to achieve without all the sacrifice. Like they just wanted to jump to this full autonomy, all the lunch breaks, no moral injury, whatever that's supposed to be, and doing all this kind of stuff. But they should do it like right out of school, right? And that just doesn't exist. It's, everybody has to kind of has to earn their keep to a certain extent. And you have to do you have to learn, you have to go through some of the crappiness of all of these things in order to get to the positions or get to the point where, you're it's a little bit more cushy, and that's not mean, and that doesn't mean that you are morally injured because you have to, go through some suckiness. Everybody does. And that's that's life. And I don't know, just because, I'm always weary of people who say things like, it's always been my dream to become a nurse. And that's kind of what I'm sensing from this, being frustrated that things aren't perfect according to, some utopian ideal. It's not a moral injury. So let me just repeat that because it bears repeating. Being frustrated that things aren't perfect according to a utopian ideal isn't a moral injury. Having to work at a job that can kind of suck isn't not working to the top of, someone's ability or, their license or whatever. And again, I'm always weary of people who say things like, it's always been my dream to become a nurse. Because many times they're kind of moon-eyed about it, and they think the grass is greener on the other side. Meaning, they hate their job. They hate their job because of some unreal expectation of pay or of joy that they will get. And, it's all milk and honey and sunshine and rainbows and lollipops and unicorns and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's unfair to think, that's unfair to think that, number one. And number two, I think it's I feel like they think it's unfair that they have to perform some menial task. And it kind of reminds me of this Jordan Peterson clip, and I posted it up on the Facebook page, so go to the Facebook page and watch that. But it talks about like the diner from hell, and he talks about his friend who was very intelligent but didn't educate himself to his level of intelligence. And so there was kind of this I don't know, menial things were beneath him. And as far as I'm concerned, there's really no job out there that is beneath us as people. I mean, positive cash flow is king. If there's anything that I learned that came out of the military when I had a really hard time finding a job fresh out of the military was that positive cash flow is king, and there's nothing that is not worth doing in order to serve your family.
You're listening to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast.
For some of us, it might seem a little bit obvious, but for some people, it doesn't seem that way. It seems like they think that just because things aren't the way you want them to be right now means that they live in some kind of dystopia where things will never get better and things are never going to progress, and that, people who are in positions of power or, who are earning a lot of money or something like that were always that way. And they don't see all the work that went in behind it. My uncle he started a business in 1973, right after the Vietnam War, and he started a business, and he started in my grandmother's basement. And, it took 5 years for him to really kind of even to be doing business where he wasn't just doing favors for friends. And then probably another 20 years to put all of the equipment that he needed together to really get going. It's probably only been in the last 10 years where he's really kind of living a little bit more comfortably, where he's able to take a vacation here and there and stuff like that. So, but if people looked at where he is now and just judged him completely on that without seeing any of the 35 years of sacrifice and hard work, and there were a lot of years where he didn't pay himself a paycheck, and his son, my cousin, is partners with him, and there's been a bunch of years where his son didn't take a paycheck, or minimally. because they needed to keep the doors open, because, businesses ebb and flow, and especially small and medium businesses, there's a lot more instability in those things. But the point is that you can't judge something now without looking at what it took to get there. And you can't, and just because things aren't where you want them to be doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of sacrifice. And just because it takes all of that doesn't mean that, things are bad, or things are always going to be bad, or you're living in some kind of, on planet bullshit or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's not what it is. And I want to go back to some of the things that they said about being an FNP, because some of them were true, but the list that they weren't making were all the things, about being an FNP or being a provider of any kind, really, that aren't perfect. And number one, being an FNP without any other experience isn't going to give you, isn't going to give someone the base of knowledge they need in order to be a good practitioner. And I say that because I think you can get your NP in about 2 years. So if you went and you did, you got your ADN, your associate's degree, so your basic RN, and then went right into an FNP school, it means you have zero clinical experience other than just being clinicals. And I'm not poo-pooing that, but, with no real clinical experience, you're going from school to school, and suddenly you're a practitioner. And you go, well, 4 years of school, like, okay, for a physician, for example, who FNPs are kind of like a weird hybrid between physicians and nurses. But, a physician goes through 4 years of a bachelor's program, usually 3 years of medical school, and then they have 3 to 4 years of a residency of some kind, sometimes a fellowship or something like that afterwards. So, like, there's some significant amount of school, and if we want to talk about the salary kind of thing that goes along with it, people who look at doctors and say, oh, well, they earn so much money and da-da-da-da-da. Well, they go through all those years of residency where they're working. One of my friends just got an email from their residency program, and it said, they're putting an official policy together to limit the number of hours to 120 hours per week that a hospital can work a resident. And you go, okay, so they're limiting them to 120 hours. That would be completely unthinkable for most people out in, for most people. Let's just say most people, like, completely out of the realm of reasonableness to any degree. And they're saying, well, that's the upper limit of what you're allowed to do, which means that there were probably a bunch of people who were working more than 120 hours a week, and that is to such a degree where they had to put a policy in place to stop it. And they are earning money, but it's usually between $30,000 and $40,000 a year to work 120 plus hours per week in a highly technical, very high consequence job. So again, that's a little, but I digress. That's not the point. So, they go through a lot of years and a lot of really, really, really intense, really intense experiences in order to get to the point where they're practicing independently. And if you're practicing independently as an FNP with 2 years of RN school and then 2 years of an NP program, I'm not sure that's going to give you what you need in order to successfully practice as a nurse practitioner. And that's my opinion. but the autonomy that they seek really doesn't exist. Even for an MD with 30 years of experience, they don't operate with full autonomy. That just doesn't, that doesn't compute. That doesn't really exist. Preventative care. So one of the third thing that they put in their little list of desirables and why they wanted to go be an FNP was preventative care. Preventative care can happen anywhere. That can happen in the ER as a regular nurse. That can happen as a tech in the ER. That can happen as a CNA on a med-surg floor. You could get a job on, they could go with a basic RN. They could go get a job in a mobile clinic and help people gain better access to basic care services, and that would be a great preventative services or a great preventative care service. And you don't have to go be an FNP for that. The fourth thing was education, or patient education. And number one, patient education happens everywhere. And you don't get to do better patient education and don't have you don't have more educated patients if you're an NP. Like, you get the same patient population basically everywhere you go. So if you're an RN, you're dealing with the same people that you are as an MD, as you are, a BSN or an FNP. Like, you're dealing with the same people. You suddenly, being a nurse practitioner isn't going to, suddenly have. You're not going to suddenly have better educated patients, and that has to happen everywhere. So I'm not really sure that really belongs on the list. Primary care, you can go work in a clinic as 9 to 5 clinic as an RN. You can go to telenursing, doing telephone triage stuff. You can do that as a basic RN, and that's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You don't have to go become an FNP for that, so I don't think that really belongs on the list. And then I kind of want, because I'm a small business owner, besides the podcast and besides going through nursing school and besides working in the ER as a nurse, I have had several businesses and stuff like that, and a lot of them are just I have an interest in doing something, and I just go with it. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur in that way. But I don't think that this person really understands what having your own practice means. It means that you have to take full responsibility of a business owner. And that's really what it means. And that means you have to pay rent, or at least a portion of it if you're kind of doing a practice with a bunch of other people. But again, that means you're taking away some of your autonomy. It means that you have to be concerned about profit and loss, because you have to pay yourself, number one, and then you have to pay employees, like a clerk or nurses. You have to pay for supplies. You have to pay for lights. You have to pay, for air conditioning. Like, all of those bills happen. They don't just magically happen, and you're not going to just get some office at some hospital and stuff like that and just have full autonomy. If you're going to have your own practice, this is what it means. And speaking of paying people, you have, having your own practice means you either have to pay for someone or for a service to do payroll. And or you have to learn to do it yourself and keep all your financial books in perfect order. And that is a full-time job in and of itself. One of the last businesses that I had, or actually one of the first businesses I had, I wasn't able to keep up with all the payroll stuff that I had, and I ultimately kind of had to quit that. I had to dissolve that business because it was costing me so much time and money. Like, I couldn't actually do the business because I had to do payroll. So instead of going out and doing the things that I wanted to do, I couldn't because I had to spend so much time doing all the payroll stuff. And if you don't keep up with all that stuff, it could be tax evasion, and there are some wicked fines there, or you could have to go back and do all of your taxes over again for for years. I think it's like 7 years or 8 years or something like that. I can't really remember at this point, but payroll and unemployment insurance, quarterly tax statements and payments, the awful systems that like there's one that you have to report onto, and then another one that's even a worse terrible, a worse system that you have to pay into, and then you have to do this quarterly through like state and federal government systems. One system changes, requires you to log in every 90 days, but you have to reset your password like every 60 days. So it's like before you have to pay your quarterly taxes, you have to change your password, and then it's ridiculous. And and the list goes on and on and on. So that's really kind of the point, is I completely understand the spirit of why this person started looking at like an NP program, but after they said it's like, well, I can't sacrifice my happiness. I won't work in a job, if I'm not happy. And that's just, you're never going to be happy. It doesn't matter if you're a nurse or an FNP or a physician or, the CEO of a company or anything else like that. Like you're going to I feel like that kind of person is going to find a way to be unhappy. From Tim Duggan Books comes #1 international bestseller, The Language of Kindness, A Nurse's Story by Christy Watson. Available in softcover, as an ebook, and on audio from Penguin Random House. Christy Watson spent 20 years as a nurse in the UK, and in this intimate and powerful book, she opens the doors of the hospital and shares its secrets. She takes us down hospital corridors to visit the wards and meet her unforgettable patients. All of us will experience illness in our lifetimes, and we will all depend on the vital care and kindness that nurses offer us. Yet the people who form the vanguard of our healthcare system remain unsung, at least in the UK. In this age of fear, hate, and division, the language of kindness reminds us that we share and have an urgent need for compassion. Pick up your copy of The Language of Kindness by Nurse Christy Watson. It's available as an ebook and on audio from Penguin Random House. Have you ever gotten stuck on something just stupid? Like it's something that you can't understand why you even waste time on it. That's the Pearson Vue Trick for me. Unfortunately, my brain has decided that there's a principle here, and I realize that I'm not that far removed from nurses who are just taking the NCLEX, but I think this podcast specifically has helped me gain a lot of perspective and given me, a different focus perhaps, or at least a more intense focus in a certain area. And I see a lot of new grads and students as kind of my responsibility, the same way as a nurse might feel responsibility for a patient. And I want to protect them from risk. So I think it's time to talk about the Pearson Vue Trick in real terms. First, it comes with some pretty significant risk, and it doesn't work for everyone. The risk I'm talking about is, if you don't know what the Pearson Vue Trick is, just look it up real quick and then come back. And like the way it's supposed to work is that you try to schedule a new test and you use a credit card and you put in the wrong expiration date, or you put in the wrong security code on the back. You put those things in wrong, and if it tries to charge you, it gives you a bad pop-up. And if it says, well, we can't schedule because you recently scheduled another one already, that's considered the good pop-up or whatever. But if you forget either of those, or you do it wrong, or if the wrong pop-up comes up or whatever, and you get charged, it's non-refundable. It's a $200 risk, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here. But it comes with a pretty significant risk. I think most of us at that point, if you've taken 4 to 6 weeks, or even 2 to 6 weeks to study for the NCLEX, you're probably at the very end of your finances, waiting for to get the new job going and stuff like that. So like a $200 charge that's not refundable for any reason is kind of a big deal, I think, and it doesn't work for everybody. So even after doing the trick, it really doesn't seem to alleviate people's stress and anxiety. And if you're on Facebook, if you're on any kind of social media, and you belong to some of the nursing groups and stuff like that, how many times have you been on and seen like the screenshot of the Pearson Vue website, with a good or bad pop-up? And it always seems to follow the same script. Tell me you haven't seen this. Has anyone ever gotten the good pop-up and still failed? Has anyone ever gotten the bad pop-up and still passed? Does this sound like someone who has, had their stress relieved? It doesn't to me, And is it really all that bad to tell people to wait 24 hours? Like the resistance that I get when I just say, just don't do the trick, just wait. It's, it's okay. But Michael, how could you expect them to deal with all the stress of not knowing? Let me throw some knowledge, some wisdom in all of our directions, including me, including mine. Like, I had to keep this in mind too. Like, I'm not excluding myself from needing to get talked to about being patient. I'm an extremely impatient person. When my grandma took her nursing boards, and she took it in 2 different states, she waited 6 or 9 weeks to hear back, and it was all done by mail back at those times. I mean, what do you think people did in those 6 to 9 weeks? When my EMT instructor took his boards less than 20 years ago, because it was just after September 11th when he finished, they had to wait 6 weeks. Again, same thing. It was either a big envelope or a small envelope. When I took my EMT boards, it was on a Friday. It was on the Friday of Independence Day weekend, and so I had to wait like 4 days because I wouldn't get, because it was at Friday at like 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I think finally Monday afternoon or something like that, or maybe I took it Thursday. I can't remember, but it was like 3 or 4 days where I didn't get my results, and I had to go onto the NREMT website, to see that I passed, and then when I took my NCLEX, I had to wait a whole 24 hours to find out before, from my board of nursing, before they posted results of my NCLEX. And then I had an active license in under 48 hours, and I just don't know how I could have survived those 24 to 48 hours. I mean, does that not seem kind of silly? I mean, I think we can all understand the stress that people are under, and I don't think I'm trying to decrease or trying to, again, poo-poo the stress that people are under, but like, we can't make it 24 hours anymore? Seriously, we can't make it 24 hours. And I realize that not every state is the same, but for most of the country, like, quick results are available in 48 hours. Your board of nursing is probably going to update its website and the results in 24 hours. It's probably going to happen the next day. And you will probably have an active license within 72 hours. That doesn't seem like this humongous mountain you have to, climb, and you have to wait 6 months to find out if you passed, and, There's zero risk involved in waiting 24 to 72 hours. The benefits of doing the Pearson Vue Trick, or the PVT, sure seem, unreliable and minuscule, and the risks are not insignificant. And, again, what risk? Well, first, if you don't do the trick correctly, you can get charged $200, and someone will always counter, like, if I'm having a discussion online with somebody about it, they'll say, well, that's why you used the wrong expiration date or the wrong code on the back. And, but then something unexpected happens and it says the code is wrong, or, they enter the wrong code, and they get, or they forget about it and somebody gets charged. I mean, it happens all the time. And, let's just say it like it used to be, that a good, let's just say everything is the way it used to be, right? Okay. So that a good pop-up was fairly reliable, and a bad pop-up could also just mean a false negative. Well, first off, if it is, that means that it's not reliable and you could still pass, and so you still have to stress over it, and now you just have something more to stress about. But again, I digress. If you get charged because you get the bad pop-up, you get the bad pop-up, and so you get charged, and so you panic, and you put the right stuff in. You might have actually passed, but you got charged $200 in order to be stressed out and angry for 24, 48 hours, only to find out later that you actually passed, because it's when you get the false negative that you're going to get charged, because you're going to try something, you're going to try it again. And I've read 100 different posts where people go, well, I just kept trying the PVT over and over again, just because they get the good pop-up, and they tried it 24 times in 24 hours, or 30 times and, on the first day, because they didn't believe it. Stop doing it. Stop doing that. That clearly means to me that you don't believe in the results, and it clearly means that your stress and anxiety is not resolved by doing this stupid trick anyway. So why? I don't personally get it. And if people know it's not 100% reliable, and real results are available in 24 hours for most of the country, and it doesn't seem to relieve their stress, why do people do it? And why do people why do people defend it seemingly to the death? I just don't get it. And and that's where it becomes a nursing issue for me. I help educate people and protect them from risk by educating them, right? That's what we're all supposed to do. So there it is. So the last thing I'll say about this, and this is purely my opinion. I don't think you should cheapen one of the greatest moments of your life with a trick. You've worked incredibly hard for years to get to this moment. Why put yourself at risk, and why add stress for something that is unreliable? You didn't get through nursing school with tricks. You didn't get through the NCLEX with tricks. Don't cheapen this experience with one. So, there it is. Hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you very soon, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks. Love you guys. Take care.
If you like the show, the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is available on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Libsyn Web Player, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, and SoundCloud. So go to wherever you download podcasts, subscribe, rate us, review us, write into the show, and smash that subscribe button. Remember to leave only 5-star reviews, because that's the only ratings that count to get us noticed by more nursing students. Write in and join the show at realtalknursing@gmail.com, on Facebook Messenger, Twitter, or Instagram. Don't forget to reach out and tell us if you have any announcements for graduations, good grades, difficult tests you've passed, friends you want to help congratulate, and your announcement will be featured on the show. So write in at realtalknursing@gmail.com, or use Messenger, Instagram, or Twitter. We're building a community of fun and supportive nursing students, and I want you to be a part of this crazy nursing school journey.
It was great being back with you today. Thanks for listening and helping me keep this podcast rolling. There's more to nursing school than just content. Remember, in nursing school, the only easy day was yesterday. We can get through this together. This Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is a Real Talk production. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory to my Grandpa Smith. We buried him today, and we all said our final goodbyes. Fair winds and following seas.
Sic semper tyrannis, facta non verba.
Good night, Steve Cannon, wherever you are. Annyeong kasayo. Now you go home. Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is a holy moly, I can't believe you're still listening to this podcast.